questions were from the locals. So, who likes movies? Wow. Someone just shout out at random your favorite movie. Keep it clean. Pulp Fiction. It's a great movie. The Matrix is a great movie. My favorite movie is The Exorcist, which is really good news because the next person up on stage, Niels, who's the author of this book, which he will be signing for people later, but not giving away, he has to make money, calls himself the Management Exorcist. So here, up on stage will be Niels, and let's all see if his head goes through 360 degrees. Warm round of applause, please.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, good to be back in Budapest after 24 years, by the way. My first visit here. So much has changed. What I loved outside was that there are 3 bookstores next to each other. So in this street here, 3 bookstores, one aside the other. So apparently people here read a lot, which I think is a good thing, right? I want to talk to you about the obsolescence of management. Management, the social technology, I think Tim touched on that briefly in his speech. Management, the social technology, died around 40 years ago. And since then, it has been a zombie technology. It is a zombie technology that is present in organization, but it doesn't have, do you know zombie movies, zombies TV series maybe, The Walking Dead and so on, yeah? Zombies, they have little consciousness of their own fate and state. So the zombie doesn't know it is dead, or more precisely, scientifically speaking, undead. Management is just like that. Management, the social technology, is dead. It is undead, actually, because it still exists in organizations, but there's no life in it. And I want to explain to you why that is, what happened to organizations when management died, and why we, people in organizations, also managers, leaders, working on projects, on software development, or whatever it could be, unfortunately, we insist on zombie techniques and on zombie thinking to make organizations and work. So I want to briefly sum up what happened in the past that made the world change and that made organizations change in theory, but in practice we are lagging behind. One example for this is our talk about culture. Not sure if this applies to you, but often in organizations we talk about, oh, our organization has the wrong culture. Have you ever heard that or thought that? Yeah, our company could have a better culture, and so. The problem with culture from a scientific point of view is that, and I'm very much using scientific concepts, for example, from psychology and from systems theory. In systems theory, we say, well, culture, you cannot change it. Culture is like a shadow. Your organization, thus, has exactly the culture it deserves. If the culture of your company is fucked up, it's not the culture's problem. It's that there's something fucked up that creates that culture. Organizations produce culture all the time. Culture is like a shadow. So if I'm standing here in the light, there's a shadow, but can I change the shadow? Of course not. I cannot change the shadow. What I can change is my position towards the light. I can wait for the sun to go up and down. We can do all that, but we can never change the shadow. We cannot change the shadow of organizational culture either. We can only change the what? Environment, yes. Well, I would use a different word. We can change the system so that culture changes. But hacking culture is complete nonsense. If you have a book, Culture Hacks at home, I have one of those books. It's rubbish. You can throw it away. That will never work. We cannot change culture. We have to change the system. We have to work the system. That is actually what leadership is about, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. First of all, let's consider why our organizations are where they are. Your organization may be small or big, but you probably apply this concept. Do you recognize this concept? Top, down, bottom up, whatever you call it. This is actually what you see here, and this image is the essence of the social technology that we call management. Management is a technology, a concept, a mental idea that was born in a certain time and that has an inventor. I would like to celebrate here with you the inventor of management. Who is it? The inventor of management? Who might be the inventor of management? Frederick Winslow Taylor, who said that? Brilliant. It's totally correct. Of course, there were several inventors of management. There was not only one. But Frederick Winslow Taylor is the main person here to mention. 104 years ago, he published his seminal book about management, one of the first management bestsellers, of course, as well, The Principles of Scientific Management. Frederick Taylor was the first to give practicing managers a scientific underpinning, a theory that didn't exist before. Before that, we had practicing managers already, but there was no rationale, no real schooling for managers. There were no management associations. All that only came over time. And Frederick Taylor was the first to have a great idea of how to really make management stick as a scientific idea, as a concept. And Frederick Taylor had this one. Do you see the notion here that's depicted in this illustration here, in this image? One fundamental concept is in all of management, the social technology. Frederick Taylor had that brilliant idea, not only to prescribe the work and so on, and to divide it functionally. He also suggested that. But the big idea behind all this is that he suggested to liberate the doing from the thinking. To liberate the doers, the workers, from the thinking. That hadn't existed before. It was revolutionary. What Frederick Taylor suggested was that let the workers not think, put the thinking at least one hierarchical level on top of the doing, and then steer the organization from the upside down. That was perfect. It was like an efficiency explosion that happened in the industrial age. 104 years ago, Frederick Taylor published this concept. It wasn't an immediate success, but it became a quick success in the 10s and 20s and 30s of the last century. So most of our organizations have become used to this kind of concept. We also may have become addicted to this concept. If I ask you, you work in organizations, most of you, does your organization have an org chart? Hands up if your organization has an org chart. See, you are all addicted to management, because every org chart, it's one of the fundamental tools to create Taylorism, to define who is the thinking part, who are the thinking parts of the organizations, and who are the followers. Information flows up, decision-making is in principle taken at the top, decisions are taken at the top, commands flow down. Control and steering happens from the top down. Of course, we have created lots and lots of methods to create this steering in organizations. Like, we have standardized processes, we have made lots of rules, we use planning and targets and incentives to drive people's behavior, we also control people's time. All this is all these tools, all these instruments, all these methods of management have been follow-ups to the basic idea: take the thinking out of the work, let the managers do the thinking for the non-thinkers. Okay, so far? So this is management as social technology. Steering organizations from the top down like machines. We functionally divide the organization, we hierarchically divide it. That was a brilliant idea. Of course, the practices of performance management are like these, when you use these targets, incentives. In the 1970s, we added a whole bunch of additional stuff to this kind of methodology, like strategic planning and management by objectives that came in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So we have improved this model, we have improved management, but we haven't shifted the paradigm. Now, the one thing that killed management 40 years ago is depicted here on the right. Do you see what it is? The difference between the right and the left? Tim actually also touched on this. He said he understood, I'm not sure where he was, he understood the difference between the complicated and the complex. Do you see complicated and complex here? To understand why management is a zombie technology, why management died, why organizations have to transform dramatically, and why they will transform dramatically in due course, in short time. To understand that, we have to understand this difference. You don't need to understand the whole Kinefin model that is really pretty much useless. You have to understand this distinction here. This is very important. The difference between the complicated and complex. Let me sum up what it is. Complicated, an example for a complicated system is a machine or a software or a watch, as you see it here. A complicated system can be controlled from the outside. A problem that we call complicated is a problem that we do not understand. If we understand it, it becomes trivialized or simple. That is the world of the complicated. Complicated systems can have many parts, but they are externally controllable anyways. Yeah? A complicated system is either working or it is, as we say in German, kaputt. Not sure what words you have in Hungarian. So those are the two things that are the two states of the complicated system. Now, a complex system is different in certain ways. It can have many parts as well, but a complex system, it is alive. You know, a complicated system is dead by nature. A complex system is alive. It doesn't necessarily have life in it, but it is alive. An example for a complex system, of course, would be the weather or climate. Or have you ever said to a loved person something like, "You are so complicated"? Have you ever said that or heard that? "Oh my God, you are so complicated." Yes? That is, of course, scientifically speaking, complete rubbish. That's bullshit. The other loved person isn't complicated. He or she is fucking complex, right? And we are complex systems too. So the other person is not complicated. Yeah. Of course, in our private lives, we mix all that together all the time. And now the worst part is, in organizations, we mix it up too. We confuse complicated problems with complex problems. And then often we try to solve complex problems with complicated means. That means it is either wasteful or wrong or destructive or dysfunctional or totally fucked up. You can never solve complex problems with complicated means. Any idea what a complex problem would be? Like the future, is that a complex problem? If you have these Post-its, pick up a Post-it. You need a yellow and a pink Post-it for this session. On your chairs, sometimes it's behind, or actually it's behind your heads, you know, these Post-its. They're behind your head. If you have a head. Yes. So pick up the yellow Post-it first, or you keep both in your hands. If you think that the future, is that a complex problem, then please hold up the yellow Post-it, please. If it's a complex problem, hold the yellow Post-it up. Complex? Okay, those are a lot of Post-its. You can look around. Who thinks that the future is a complicated problem? Yellow Post-its? Right, perfect. Okay. You think it's a complicated problem? We have to discuss that. Complex systems, what they produce. Complex systems produce one very interesting thing. There is a simple word in English to describe it. Complex systems create. Huh? What was it? Complex systems create surprises. A complicated system doesn't create surprise. It is kaputt or it's working. A complex system creates surprises all the time. You know, other people, the weather, organizations, teams, customers, markets, they create surprises. So when you see a real surprise happening, then it's probably a complex problem. There are complicated problems in organizations that we can solve with complicated tools, like accounting, for example, bookkeeping. We can do that. That's a complicated problem. The state gives us all the rules to do accounting. I mean, we can improvise, but it's not really needed there. In accounting, we do not want to improvise so much. You know, we want to follow the rules. It's a complicated problem. And accounting is a complicated thing. It is a formal problem that we have to solve there. Now, the future, if we deal with the future with risk management or planning, that may not be the appropriate methodology. In organizations and in work, something fascinating happens. The complicated and the complex, you know, they are not enemies. They meet in work. They are there all the time. Complicated is not bad or good. Complex is not bad or good. Actually, complexity is like the weather, it just is. And the only bad thing is not to be prepared. Now in work, these two things, complicated and complex, meet. It's very important to distinguish it. You will soon see why that is so important. In work, both parts meet. The complex part of work, we call it the dynamic part of value creation. And the complicated part, that is the formal part of value creation. So now let's take a little tour in history, back 150 or 200 or 250 years in time. Before the industrial age, this is very important. How did markets look, and what was work like? You can already think about was work in the pre-industrial age. We call it the crafts manufacturing age. What do you think? Was work? Oh, let's test it. Do you think work was predominantly complicated or complex? If you think work was predominantly complicated, hold up the yellow Post-it, please. If you think in the pre-industrial age, work was predominantly complicated, hold it up. You don't have to be ashamed if it's wrong, no problem. Okay? Who thinks that in the pre-industrial age, work was predominantly complex and surprising? Okay, you are a little fearful. I didn't even see the balcony. Okay. Okay, yes, we had more votings for complex, and that is correct. Look at these markets in the pre-industrial age, in the crafts and manufacturing age. I will give you the rationale now. Imagine a violin maker here in the city of Budapest. He or she would not be able to scale, to mass produce, to manufacture and then sell. A client would come up and the product, in this case a violin, would be customized, crafts manufactured, customized to the client. And that was the normal way of value creation. There were very few goods that were traded internationally and that were standardized. So markets were incredibly local, value creation was incredibly deep. You had to produce the wood and your toolings and all the tools that you would need to build a violin, you had to produce them yourself in the crafts manufacturing age. So at that time, you couldn't standardize or mass produce. That opportunity, that window of opportunity only opened up in the industrial age. For the first time in history, we were able to serve explosively growing mass markets with standardized mass manufactured goods. Those were the great days, of monopolistic, or here we see an oligopolistic market, few players in the market, great times. For this era, for this kind of market, we invented management as social technology. Frederick Taylor gave it to us. He was the first one to understand that in this kind of mass market, you can standardize, you can take the thinking out of the doing, you can steer organizations and build them like machines, basically. That was a brilliant idea for this era. The only problem is the industrial age is over, done. It ended. This is not a question of like it or not, good or bad. It's a historical fact. The industrial age ends, markets change, they become less explosively growing. Actually, many markets detract. They implode or they stagnate. And markets are way more crowded today for several reasons that were touched upon today by other speakers, of course. Markets are crowded, and every idea that a competitor might have today in India might touch us tomorrow. So markets have changed dramatically from the industrial age to the knowledge age. Organizations haven't. We call this phenomenon the Taylor bathtub. Complexity went down in the industrial age. We were able, with management, the social technology, to reduce complexity out of work and value creation, to create machine-like, complicated system-like organizations. But then in the 1970s or so, complexity grew back into value creation and work. There were some companies, of course, that became famous in the 1970s for mastering this kind of highly complex, highly dynamic value creation. There was the wonder in the 70s. One big company became famous for doing mass production in a highly customized fashion. What was the company? From that strange country we knew little about. We called it the Japanese miracle. The company is, of course, Toyota. Toyota mastered, differently than the other car manufacturers, to do mass production in a customized, dynamic way. Of course, many things had to change at Toyota to make that happen. One might say that these companies, the Toyota, the Googles, the Southwest Airlines, the W.L. Gores of this day, are pioneers of mastering value creation for this age. There are other companies that are lagging behind. They still sit on their own model that you might call command and control, or I call it alpha, or you might call it just management. Management, the social technology, was so successful in the industrial age during that brief period of time of the Taylor bathtub here in the middle, some 70, 80, 100 years. Management was so successful that we still practice it in hospitals, public administration. Even NGOs are managed, of course. Most commercial companies are managed. Unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore. We need another kind of organization. I like to say that we have to switch from pyramid to peach. You see the peach model on the right, and I will go a little further into that. So some companies are already peaches, and there's one dirty little secret. Every organization has a peach inside. Even the worst, what's the worst company in Hungary? Can you give me a name? The worst company, the most horrific, idiotic, stupid, bureaucratic. The Post, that often comes up, or some kind of bank, or, yeah. Let's take, what? The railways, yes, okay, they're very bureaucratic probably. I will not bash Hungarian companies here, I will bash a German company. Germany's most stupid company, Deutsche Bank. Have you heard of that? Or Commerzbank, do they make business here? I mean, they are totally zombie companies, they will soon implode, but just to illustrate, imagine the most stupid company, even that stupid pyramid organization still has a little bit of peach inside. What does this mean? This peach thing comes from systems theory. Systems theory tells us that organizations actually do not have tops or bottoms. They are not pyramids. The pyramid idea of organizations is actually a beautiful illusion. Yeah? In reality, organizations do not know upside, downside, or top, down, bottom up, that kind of stuff. Organizations only know inside and outside. Outside of the organization, here the peach, you see the border or the peach, the little skin that it has. Outside of any organization, there's something beautiful. Every organization has it. Market. Yeah? Market. Every organization has a market. Only one part of the organization touches the market, and we call that part of the organization periphery. And the other part of the organization that doesn't touch the market, we call it center. Look, if you want to improve organizations and value creation and want to transform organizations, make them more agile, you cannot live without this distinction. You have to distinguish between the complicated and the complex, and center and periphery. Why? Do you guess it? Why is that so important? Learning? Learning has an important role to play in it, yes. What else? What was that? I didn't get coordination. Oh, good. Yes. Very good. Very good. Those are important facts here or topics related to it. Look, a traditional organization, with a Tayloristic mindset, how would it approach work? It would say, okay, the customer meets the company, like Deutsche Bank. A customer comes to Deutsche Bank, Germany's worst company, and then the customer meets the periphery. In this case, there is a girl, but there are boys and, young and old, it doesn't matter. The client meets the periphery. The periphery, of course, is not allowed to think. That's Taylorism, right? We do not trust the periphery. It could be a salesperson also. They are idiots, according to Tayloristic notion. Who of you works in a company that has a sales department? Please hold up hands if you have a sales department. See the problem? That is also a stupid Tayloristic idea turned structure. No organization should have a sales department. We will get back to that in a few minutes. Here, managed organization, centralized steering, Taylorism. The customer meets the periphery gives the information to the center takes the decision, command is going back, and then there can be execution. This model of centralized decision-making works perfectly well under which condition? That an organization is what? And that markets are what? Monopolies may be an answer, and let's talk about complex and complicated. If markets are complicated, same value creation over and over again, little surprise or no surprise, then this thing with the centralized steering works perfectly. Steering, thus, it collapses once markets and customers become more dynamic. Markets become more competitive, customers become more challenging, and so on. Centralized steering collapses once markets become really dynamic, really surprising, really complex. One might say that complexity killed management 40 years ago. There is only one way out of the trouble of centralized, this is centralized steering. Centralized steering was fine for the industrial age. It wasn't humanistic, to take away the workers' capability and if you do not allow workers and people to think, it is humanistically messed up, it's fucked up. But it works, it is efficient. Yeah? Once markets become complex and really surprising, there is only one thing that we can do, that we have to do, to avoid failure. And that is radical decentralization of decision-making. That's what you see here. In complexity, you cannot make decisions in the center. People with roles in the periphery, they have to make the decision, because they are closer to the market. And what happens in complex, dynamic, interesting market, one of you mentioned, learning happens, and where predominantly happens the learning? In the fucking periphery. Because the periphery touches the market, the center doesn't, the periphery learns faster. And it learns especially about clients, for example. The center does not. Of course, if you think in terms of systems theory, it is not the individual people that are in the center or in the periphery. People actually have roles in the center or the periphery that they can pull on and off like hats. So if you work in a company, you can have roles that are in the periphery and roles that are in the center. The key piece here is we have to radically decentralize decision-making to be closer to the complex and dynamic and living markets of today. And the center can never steer against the market. We could say that companies like General Electric or Microsoft or whatever company, or the Post or whatever company, electricity companies, they outsourced the steering to markets a long time ago. Steering was outsourced. We don't need any centralized steering anymore. We need it in terrorism, but we do not need it anymore. Steering has become counterproductive. Okay, now I did something with the slides. Not sure what that is. Ah, here it is again. We have to decentralize decision-making to the periphery, and that means specifically not decentralizing it to individuals in the periphery, but to teams. So imagine an organization, a Peach organization, has a network of highly autonomous mini-company-like teams in the periphery that can act like mini-companies. That is not the organization of the future, that is the organization of today. Actually, if you kid themselves that you can still steer and have Taylorism and so, it's just a beautiful illusion. This is already happening out of self-defense. Markets have changed, they have become complex and dynamic, so we have to adopt. Every pyramid organization, even the worst, secretly has this Peach inside. But it's often like an untrained muscle. This kind of structure on the right, it is not well known. Organizations are like theaters. There is a front stage, there's a light, and there's some actions. There might be actors on the stage. But the most important part of the theater is obviously the backstage. Much more is happening in the backstage. Not so much on a day like today, but in a real theater play, a lot of stuff happens on the backstage. Organizations fool themselves that here, formal structure, the left side, the pyramid, is the front stage. The real work happens on the backstage in this kind of decentralized Peach organization. The problem is that these structures currently in most organizations fight each other. The front stage and the backstage are not aligned. One little hint, maybe some of you work in startups or small companies. Hands up if you work in a small company, startups. Then you might say, what the hell? That doesn't matter to me, right? This kind of distinction between Peach and pyramid. Of course, a startup is lucky. Few people, like this. It's a one-cell organization if you have a very small company, a startup, a one-team organization. The trouble starts when a startup grows. Growth is like the worst for a startup. I mean, a startup can die, that is not so cool. And the second worst thing is it survives, it becomes successful, and it grows to 20 people maybe, to 30 people. And of course, once the one-cell team size is reached, the company grows further, there is a cry for structure. And more often than not, we opt for command and control, management. Everybody does it, functional division. We create a sales department, I mentioned that before, and then we create an HR and finance department and department. In the word department, you see that the word departed is inside, right? Which refers to the zombie topic. Of course, an organization shouldn't have departments in complexity. And so this is what most organizations, they adopt what I call alpha or management, the standard model of organizational leadership. We shouldn't really call it leadership, but management as it is. Very few organizations have turned from pyramid to Peach. They have radically decentralized. They have transformed themselves. A good example is Toyota, which Toyota transformed itself from pyramid to Peach in the 1950s, 1960s. Or DM Drogeriemarkt, I think that's a company that's present here in Hungary. DM, a drugstore company. They decentralized, they really dramatically transformed themselves in the 1990s. There are other famous cases like Semco from Brazil that did this. Some very few companies also went from one-cell startup, pioneering phase, little company, to multi-cell networked organizations. Southwest Airlines, Al Gore, Google pretty much is still there. There are some organizations that went direct from what we call the pioneer phase, the small age phase, the small company phase, to the Peach, and some organizations transformed themselves. Both kinds of transformation are possible. Here are a few cases, of course, of companies that you might have heard about that pretty much have this model well in place, and they also Most of these companies, they are exceptional. They are not small, they are biggish, big or very big even. And some of these companies even understand very well how their value creation works, what kind of management practices they have to avoid, what kind of underpinnings and principles they have to curate to maintain a radically decentralized, unmanaged, unsteered organization. An organization that's actually steered from the outside in, not from the inside out. Of course, you have heard of many of these companies. They are talked about. They always, we always rediscuss them because there aren't so many. These are pioneers of an age that started 40 years ago, and most organizations, unfortunately, are stuck in command and control. They're stuck in management. And here, I would like to do a little experiment with you. Tim talked briefly about Maslow's pyramid of needs, the hierarchy of needs, a concept published in 1953. Who of you knows this concept, Theory X and Theory Y, by Douglas McGregor? Okay, some of you know it. Okay. I will guide you briefly through what it means, what it is, and then we will do a little scientific experiment. Please already take up the Post-it notes. Every one of you needs a yellow and a pink Post-it note. You will also have to write something on these papers. You don't have to hold them up for now. First, you will have to write something on it. So if you have a pen or a neighbor has a pen, that's a good idea. You don't have to write a lot. It's very fast. First, let me explain this concept. Douglas McGregor, after pioneers of motivational theory like Abraham Maslow and Frederick Herzberg, he was the first to say that there are two types of perception of human nature. We have two images of human nature that are present in organizations, two ways of looking at human nature at work. And McGregor says we hold these two ways of thinking about other human beings in our heads and our hearts. They are concepts about other people's human nature. Let me show you the distinction, or maybe you know them. The distinction is, I will go through the text here. Theory X says people dislike work. They actively dislike work. They will try to avoid it if they can. So the role of management or leadership is to force or bribe people to make the right effort. Right? One of the key roles of leaders is to force or bribe Theory X people to make the right effort. And also to force responsibility upon them, which they will not freely accept, because people in Theory X would rather be directed than take on responsibility, right? The motivational underpinning here, or theory behind Theory X, is people are motivated mainly by money and by fear of losing their jobs. So the role of managers is to instrumentalize this, fear, and also use money and incentives as motivators. Fear and money are the most powerful motivators, according to Theory X. There's also an assumption about creativity here that you see in Theory X, which is few people have creative potential, except when it comes around circumnavigating management rules. Yeah? That's where the creativity of the Theory X person starts. You know this kind of concept of human nature? Seems familiar, right? Of course, Douglas McGregor didn't invent it, he described it. He was the first to say, okay, that exists, and there is a second theory. They are opposing. Theory Y is totally different than Theory X. You will see it here. Theory Y says people, where they need to work to feed themselves and their loved ones, but they also want to take an interest in the work. If the conditions are right, people actually can have fun at work. That is Theory Y. Theory Y is based upon the notion that people will self-direct themselves if they can accept the targets, the objectives, that they will seek and accept responsibility if the conditions are right, that people are not motivated by money or fear, but mainly by the interest to fulfill their own potential at work. People will be driven by the need for self-fulfillment at work. That is what Theory Y says. And of course, here also an assumption about creativity. Creativity, says McGregor in Theory Y, widely present in people. Creative potential is widely present in people, but grossly underused by organizations. You got it? Of course, there are names for the two concepts of motivation here. On the left, how do we call that scientifically? The concept of motivation in Theory X? Extrinsic motivation. People have to be extrinsically motivated. Theory Y says people are intrinsically motivated. Okay, you got that? Questions about the method? Two concepts of human nature. Now let's make the exercise. Take the pink Post-it note, take a pen, and now, difficult part, make it fast. Look inside your own heart. Think about your self-image. What kind of person are you? Judge yourself and write that letter on the pink Post-it note. That should be an X or a Y. It cannot be both. We're not talking about behavior here, we're talking about human nature, and that doesn't change. It's fixed, it's set. So please judge yourself, look inside your heart, judge yourself, write that, just one letter on the pink post-it note, an X or a Y. Yeah? Done that? Pink post-it note, on the pink post-it note. Yeah? There's one missing. Yeah, you can tick from any, dummy, there are, sorry, I'm unkind. There are post-it notes on every chair here. If you don't have one, look around you, there are many. He doesn't see it. Ah, okay, he couldn't see it. Ah, the pen, a pen. Now we solved it. Is he still with us? Yes, sorry, okay, good. Okay, write down quickly. You wrote down the letter, now please do the following. Exchange that pink post-it note with another person next to you. It doesn't matter who gets your pink post-it notes. It's important that you get another person's pink post-it note. You don't want to participate here? Guy in blue clothes, he doesn't even notice that I'm speaking to him, but okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, you exchanged a post-it note? Yes, did it work? Okay, now take the yellow post-it note. That was easy, right? Your self-image was very easy. Now take the yellow post-it note, that is much more difficult. Think about all people in your organization. Or if you are a one-person company, think about the people in your clients' organizations or people you know who work. Can you do that? There are some people here from Ericsson people. How many people do you have worldwide? 110,000. So in everybody here from Ericsson should think about the 110,000 globally, all people in the organization. Done that? Imagine them. Imagine all those people. If you are from a small company, 10 people, it doesn't matter. Those 10, think about them. Think about them all. Now, what is the percentage of Theory X people within that group? Please write down on the yellow post-it note that percentage of Theory X people. Not people who behave, Xy, but who are Xers. That percentage, please write it down on the yellow post-it note. You have to judge them, but we will not publicize the results, don't worry. You can judge here, and it doesn't matter. You can later change your idea, no problem. Okay, have you done that? For those of you who studied social sciences or philosophy, a percentage is a 0 or 100 or something in between. Yeah? You never know. Okay? Okay. Yellow post-it note, did you write a percentage on it? Then please exchange the yellow post-it note with your neighbor again. Some person, it doesn't matter who gets but I want you to have a yellow post-it note again. Somebody else should have written a number on it, yeah? A percentage on it. Okay, now let's analyze the results. Analyze the results, please. Take the pink post-it note, somebody else wrote a letter on it, right? Do you have it? Please hold them up. All the pink post-it notes, I want to see. Then do you have in your hands? Please hold them all up. I want to check. What the fuck is happening in the back? Okay, that was a test. Now let's analyze the results. Look at this pink post-it note. If it says X, please hold it up again. Only the X pink post-it notes, please hold them up. Do I see? I cannot see the balcony for lighting reasons. Do we see any post-its? One X, okay, 1X. True to statistical method, I will round that down to 0. We always do that in statistics. That's why they say never trust a statistic that you haven't falsified yourself. So, okay, we saw one post-it note, or were there more? I couldn't see. No more? One? Okay, 0. Now let's take the yellow post-it notes. Take a look at the yellow post-it note that you have. Somebody else wrote a number on it, right? A number or a percentage. If it says 0 or 0%, please hold the yellow post-it up. You have to hold it up high, otherwise I cannot see. Yellow post-it notes in the room. Let's see, they're on the balcony. 1, 2, I can't see anything here, sorry. 10 here in the lower floor, 10 or 15 maybe. Yes, do you see it? You can look around. I'm not lying. So we have maybe 15 to 20 post-it notes. Yellow post-it notes. Do you see the problem? The Americans say something beautiful in this kind of situation. They say, we are all fucked. Do you see why we are all fucked? We are definitely and certainly totally screwed up. Do you see why? I will get you back to Frederick Taylor, not to Frederick Taylor, to Douglas McGregor, 55 years ago. Was publishing this book in 1961. Douglas McGregor wrote, well, the surprising truth about Theory X people is They have never existed, they don't exist, they will never exist. There is no Theory X person in the world. It doesn't really exist. If McGregor is right, what then is Theory X? Any ideas what Theory X is? If there is no Xer in the world, what is Theory X? Bad management, it's a judgment, certainly, yes. What was that? Burnout? Shadow, yes. Shadow of what? Interesting, yes. McGregor said, okay, if you believe in Theory X and in the industrial age, that's what McGregor said. In the industrial age, we imagine people partly or totally as Xers, and then we create the right conditions, the right context, the right organizations, the perfect prisons for Xers. The problem is that those organizations produce the behavior we want to stamp out, we want to get rid of. Theory X is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is also a terrible prejudice about other people. It is not just a judgment, it is a prejudice. You see it? Of course, the problem is, well, you would say, well, I've seen so many Xers in my life, right? I have the suspicion that there is, many of you will have thought that over the last seconds, right? They must be there because I can see them. Well, what we observe is behavior, and behavior is not only shaped by people, but also by context. Theory X is a self-fulfilling prophecy. We create the systems that will create Xy behavior that then we will manage more. We will steer even more. So Theory X is a dangerous, a vicious prejudice about other people. The problem is that if we believe that people are X's, we consider them to be screws or nails and use an instrument that seems appropriate but isn't. And I will show you a couple of instruments that are perfect for Theory X people. What is the problem with Theory X people? They don't exist. So all the practices I will show you now are perfect tools for Theory X people who do not exist. This is the beginning. Now look at this is what I call the bullshit slide. Take a good look, take a photo. You can download the slides later. Recognize your companies? Good. That is fucked up. These are the fucked up conditions that create the fucked up behavior, that create the fucked up culture, that then we think people are all wrong. People are not wrong. Our systems are stupid. All these practices are perfect for Xers who do not exist, but that are capable to produce Xy behavior. Everyone here in this room is capable of producing Xy behavior, to adapt to a stupid X system. We can all do that. Your colleagues who are not here today, they all can also do that. Theory X-like behavior is an intelligent response to stupid systems. And that is why we are fucked. We still believe in the same shit that people in Douglas McGregor's time already believed in. We have created masses of organizations. Of course, many of these practices here, the entire notion of project management was born undead, of course. The notion of project leaders, project budgeting, you see all these practices here, right? HR is a function in the organization that was born dead. It can never have worked. Risk management, 99% of what we do is stupid. Planning is complete nonsense in complexity, where surprise hits us all the time. Planning doesn't work in complexity, we need preparation. That's what Agile does. That's why we need iteration, things that make sense for human beings and in complexity. Yeah? If you want to dive more into it, I don't have the time to, you can think about why all this here on this slide is complete nonsense. So we have to make a shift from pyramid to peach, from performance management practices of the past with lots of steering to let the market steer in a decentralized fashion. Let's react, be agile with what markets demand. We have to change the whole notion of how performance, where it comes from, how it works. We have to depart from principles of command and control that are called alpha or management to the principles of radically decentralized, self-organized, agile organizations that are called beta. This is not a choice that this is not a real choice that we have. The choice was already made. The world has already changed. Organizations have changed. We have to change how we deal with teams, not from the top down, but we have to allow for self-organization within teams. We have to move from, coordination through bosses to coordination between teams. We call that market economy in our economies. In our countries, the right model, we call it market economy, and the left model, we would call it the Soviet Union way of steering, plan-based markets. That has never worked. Organizations that are centrally coordinated cannot work either in today's market. We must always also let go of the idea that departmental functional structures and silo structures work. They cannot work because they are always steered from the top. They are always limited and they are always narrow-minded by definition, not because the people are stupid. Steering from the top doesn't work, so the alternative is to have teams acting autonomously within the periphery and teams in the center creating value for teams in the periphery. That is the game that we have to create. We have to move from accentuating formal structure to accentuating what we call value creation structure. Decentralized decision-making. This is the sum up. If we want to create agile organizations, hacking culture is impossible because culture cannot be hacked. Hacking people is not necessary. People are not the problem. They are neither the problem nor the solution. Our people are totally okay. The problem is that people so efficiently, so effectively adapt to stupid systems that we have to change systems. We have to work systems together to get to the right side. This is not the question of desire or moral or what are humanistic and beautiful. It's not about that. If we want to create effective organizations, agile organizations in the world of complexity, we have to move to the right side. The world has already changed. We have to get there. Again, management means working people, fixing people, steering the organization from the top down. Leadership means working the system together. Thank you very much. I'm open for your questions if you like. Thank you very much. Okay, I do not see the questions so far. Let's see if there's something interesting. What's the role of people? Shall I take the first one here first? What's the role of people in the center? People in the center, that's a wrong question. It's not a bad question. There are no bad questions, but it's a wrong question. Why is it a wrong question? Any ideas? Why is that a wrong question? What's the role of people in the center? What are the roles in the center? Perfect. Or we could say, what are the teams? What is the role of teams in the center? Both is correct. Very good, yes. So what is the role of the center? Let's put it like that. The role of the center is to serve the periphery. If the periphery doesn't demand anything from the center, then the center should do nothing. The center shouldn't have money by themselves because it cannot. Do you see who earns money in an organization? Only the periphery can earn money from the external market, right? The center should never earn money. The center cannot make any profits in a good organization. The center should serve the periphery with services and should be paid for it so then it can pay their bills. It should be like mini enterprises. Let's imagine HR without any money, marketing without any money. That's the right approach. Only give them money if they do something valuable for the periphery. Okay, next question. What if Theory X people exist, but they dislike leadership conferences, so you can't count them there? Can we have the same problem with, yeah, that's a classic. 6 people like that? What the hell? And this is a phenomenon, it always happens. I do this exercise all the time, and I recommend you to steal it, this little post-it exercise. Do it in your company. The X's are never there, never here. They're never here. If we could take all the 110,000 employees from Ericsson, put them in this room, well, what the hell? Now put them in a big room, we would have the same results. The people who are not here would respond the same that you responded, believe me that. This kind of exercise has been done in the 60s and 70s and 80s with different groups, adults, children, managers, bankers, old people, young people. It's always the same result because, Theory X, again, is just a prejudice. So what else? What is the Y-type equivalent for the X-type practice of salary ranges? What is the Y-type equivalent for the X-type practice of salary ranges? Salary ranges are salary rules of how much salary somebody with a certain job description, with a certain job title should have, right? What is the alternative practice? Who asked this question? It's a very good question, very good question. The opposite is, of course, to pay people according to their market value, to their needs, and to what the company can pay. In other words, salaries today are already set according to these things, the 3 things that I mentioned. We like to believe that our HR departments set salaries, but that is just beautiful nonsense. It's bureaucratic overhead. It is a luxury that we cannot afford in complexity. Do you see that? Yes, but how do you call? Okay, you adjust your salary matrix according to what happens in the market. So why do you need it? Because people tell you what their market value is in the salary negotiations. Yeah? All that is luxury, bureaucratic, it's waste. Like asking employees about the culture and their satisfaction, that is also so wasteful. All that's planning, wasteful practices. You know, people tell you the salary expectations that you have. Teams in the periphery should have an idea what they can pay for a new team member. Also central cells, they should define what they can pay, and then the rest is negotiation. Hiring somebody is one of the most complex tasks and the most noble and leadershipy tasks in an organization. We should never let that be done just by bosses and HR. Teams should hire peers. Peers should hire peers. That's how we should do it. It's the most complex thing, and we should do it ourselves. Thank you very much. That was fun. Let's have drinks. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.